You're listening to the No Gray Areas podcast with Patrick McCullough. Our guest today is Bill Bush, founder and lead pastor of Rock Point Church. Bill explains how trust is a critical element to any healthy team or individual. Let's jump in.
So Bill Bush, welcome to No Gray Areas. Thanks so much for taking the time. What was funny is you walked in today and it's like we called each other. We have the same exact black jean jacket on. Most are listening, not watching, but we're like a couple of junior high girls that called each other last night. What are you wearing?
It's probably the age thing. This is old man cool, I guess.
This is old man cool. We'll go with old man cool. I like that. Well, today we're going to talk about leadership and trust, and we'll get into that in a moment. But first, I want to get a little bit of background. So just this last weekend, you celebrated 20 years, right, as the founding lead pastor of Rock Point Church.
Yep, I was 5 years old when we started the church.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the cool thing is 15 years ago when I first moved to Phoenix, you were one of the first people I met, one of the first pastors that I met. So we were working with anti-human trafficking. I read an article in the paper how your church was involved. We met at a restaurant. You guys started working with that. We met a few times. I started preaching at your church a little bit. Now this is our home church as a family, and I have to watch you every week preach.
You had no hair on the chin.
Exactly.
But you had hair on the top of the head.
Yeah. Most people that knew me back then wouldn't recognize me now. Yeah, exactly. Well, congratulations on that, 20 years.
Thank you.
And you went from meeting in a living room with a handful of people, right?
Yeah, and then a Bible study at a clubhouse.
Yeah.
And then meeting at a school.
Yeah.
And then finally getting the land and the facility where actually we're sitting right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, the amazing thing about that is so when you're meeting in this school, right, you buy this land. This was out in the middle of nowhere, right?
Oh,
you
yeah.
got 50, was it 50 acres you guys got?
No, 30, well, we got 10 up front, then we did another buyback from the guy that owned it. We got him to be the bank for us because nobody would loan us enough money.
Yeah.
So we got 10 for free, actually, from a whole
that's
nother
a good deal.
backstory. But then we financed it. So we got about 37 acres,
Okay,
36 and a half. And
So see, I was using pasture numbers.
yeah,
there.
back
Just
there, yeah.
rounded up to 50.
Rounded up to 300 acres, but
That's
no.
exactly.
But yeah, there was nothing out here. Matter of fact, this piece of land, it's weird. We did aerial shots, found it all the way back. Our exec pastor, he found aerial shots that they took for farming, like way back into like his, the Wright brothers were basically flying over this thing. And you could see there was farms all around, there was ranches all around, but this piece of land, as far back as you can find, had nothing ever on it. No one ever lived here.
Empty.
No, it was empty.
People thought you were a little crazy back then, right? Like you guys are just a little church meeting in a school, and you're buying 37 acres. That's crazy.
We got the first acres, and we thought we should build a building. And all I've known is in the history of all the people who have gone before me and mentored me, and I watched it. If you trust God and He's doing something, no one ever said, you know what, we got too much land.
Yeah.
So we have more parking than we know what to do with. We don't know what to do with it. So it's like we had an opportunity to get it while it was cheap. And I go, that's the one thing that's not going down, the price of the land.
Yeah.
And so we basically did 3 major campaigns. Our first 3 were all about just getting more dirt, that's talk about leadership pull. That's like, how do you get people to say, I'm going to sacrifice and all we're going to have is a little bit more dirt.
Yeah.
No building.
And by the way, go drive out there and see it. It's in the middle of nowhere too.
And
at that
wonder
time.
why are we doing this? Yeah.
Now, like for listeners that don't know where this is located, it's exploding in growth around here. You have a big high school right across the street that you guys have a great relationship with, do stuff with the kids. I mean, it's just amazing. It's an amazing God story, how God worked all this out. So anyway, congratulations. So you went from meeting in a living room, 20 years later, you're having a big celebration. You got into this building about a year, right after COVID started. It was perfect timing for you guys.
Yeah. We finished the building and then we couldn't meet in it for a few months.
Yeah. So you had your grand opening ready to celebrate and COVID hits, and then you have an empty brand new building for months.
But yet you had your new house payment.
Yeah.
But you couldn't move into your new house. Yeah. But you still had to pay for it.
Yeah. Perfect scenario.
Yeah, perfect scenario. It was fun times.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Yeah. So if we back up, you're from California originally.
Well, no, I'm originally from here.
Oh, you are?
That's
right.
I grew up out here in South Scottsdale, and then I went to California for college.
It was college.
Married a California girl, stayed out there until 20 years ago when we moved back to start the church.
Yeah. So baseball, you went to college to play baseball, right? And you played baseball, and then you had some injuries. Yeah. You're a pretty good baseball player.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good enough to play in college.
Yeah, I had my moments.
Yeah. And then you're working as a youth pastor, right, in California?
Yeah, started out in youth ministry.
Yeah, and then you felt God calling you to come plant a church out here, and so that's where the story goes. So let's get into really what we're focusing on today is leadership and trust. So recently, or I say recently, a couple of years ago, we're both 50s now, in our 50s.
Yeah.
So when you say recently, that can be anywhere within a decade, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But recently, I think it was just a couple of years ago, you guys did a study as a church, as a staff team, correct? Yeah. Okay, and that was with a national organization.
Yep.
So explain that a little bit.
It was, it's called Best Christian Workplaces, and they actually consult. They'll survey your whole team anonymously, and they look at different factors that really it's about, are you a good place to work for? It's really evaluating what kind of culture do you have?
Yeah.
Do you have a culture that people feel free to do their job and work well? And we thought we had a pretty good culture. We'd worked hard, and so we brought them in and let them do the survey. And turned out we got basically for a first time organization, they were shocked. They called us up and they wanted to interview us because we kind of got the highest score they'd ever seen.
Wow, that's really cool.
And because we immediately fired everybody that we thought would be a problem before we took the survey. So we said it. No, that's not what happened. But so they wanted to interview us, and what was interesting was the president, the person that we had a Zoom call with them to interview. They're like, the only weird thing is you had one of your senior level staff not take the survey. And I was like, oh, that was me. And like, wait, why didn't you do it? I wanted to see what everyone else said. I know what I would say. I didn't want to skew it. She's like, in the history of us doing this, the senior pastor, the lead pastor has never not taken the survey.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, maybe that's
they
part of
usually go down and check the 10 out of 10 box.
Maybe that's part of the reason why we got such a high score. I don't know.
Yeah.
So they were kind of just bewildered by us.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that is I know about that test. I know a lot of organizations that have taken that test, and most of the time they're surprised the other direction. Is the senior leadership team or the lead team is thinking, we have a pretty good culture. I mean, we can fix some things, and they get the results back, and they're like, ooh, actually, our staff is saying we don't have as good a culture as we thought we did. Yeah. Yours actually went the other direction, which is interesting. So let me just pause here really quick before we get into that leadership and trust, and just say, before there's some listeners that maybe are reaching to turn this off and going, well, I'm not a leader, so this podcast doesn't affect me or connect with me. What would you say to them?
I would say that I think every human being at some level is a leader.
Yeah. Yep.
You're either a leader in your home, you got somebody you work with, you got family members, you're and then ultimately leadership is self-leadership too. So a lot of principles that you learn in leadership, you should at least apply to yourself.
Yeah.
To lead yourself. Like can you, like you said, leadership and trust. Can I trust myself?
And someone knows that about themselves. They may not share that with anybody else, but they know if they keep lying to themselves. They know if they're exaggerating stories. They know if so the leadership and trust just for self-leadership is very important, right?
Well, also, I think there's leaders out there that don't know they're a leader because they have the wrong idea.
Uh-huh.
And so they just, like, some of the listeners might think, well, I'm not a leader. But after we talk about it, maybe you are. And maybe you should step up and embrace your leadership a little bit more, because you just think it's all about title or position, and leadership isn't about title or position.
Yeah,
you can get a title and not be a good leader.
Yep, we've all seen that.
Yeah, and you can be a great leader with no title.
Exactly. So
yeah,
and we've both witnessed people that didn't think they were a leader, and other people saw it in, and then they rose to that occasion and just did things that they didn't.
And every time they're on a team, every time they're in a room, if you understand what leadership really is, they actually, you watch them and you're like, they led in that moment.
Yeah.
They wouldn't know they were leading that. They just did.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we do as an organization. We don't necessarily create leaders.
Yeah.
You spot them. I used to say, you spot them, you sprout them, and you spread them.
Okay, say that again.
You spot, sprout, and spread leaders.
Spot.
So you spot them, you plant the seed, you help grow them, you water them. We don't create them, but we provide the environment that allows them to grow, and then you get more of them.
Yeah.
You send them out and create hopefully a bumper crop of leadership.
Yep. That right there, that's almost a mic drop moment. We could almost just end this podcast right there, except we have to define a little bit what trust and leadership
exactly.
is. Well, let me back up again then and say, well, why is trust and leadership so important? So I'm thinking, and you probably thought about this book, Patrick Lencioni wrote a book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. The bottom of that pyramid that he does is trust, and he's saying if you don't have that, everything falls apart. But add to that, why is trust so important for leadership?
Well, I love how Lencioni puts it, right? It's like, if you don't get this, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have all the looks of a leader, if you have all of the abilities of the leader, if you can say leadership things, if like look at Saul, and they'll say like he from the surface they picked him to be a king because he looked like a king, and he fought. He was actually a good warrior, and he looked great. But as time went on, character and some other things prevailed. It's like you couldn't really trust him. Yeah. And when trust isn't there, it doesn't matter about any of the other skills. You could have the greatest idea in the world, but like, you always know that. You have that friend that always could talk a good game. Like they're like, we're going to do this to be great. And you get excited. And then every time they have a plan, it never works out the way they said. After a while.
It's just noise in the background.
It's like background noise. You're like, you know what? That's just Bobby. Or, you know what? It's like, that's just,
so true.
They're always that way. And so that kind of leader, you know what they do?
We both have a friend in mind right now.
Yeah, we do. And if you don't have a friend in mind, that makes you the friend. You're the one.
I hope I had a friend in mind.
And then that type of leader, you know what they do? They are always having turnover in their followers and who they don't really develop other leaders. So people get excited for a while. And then they all fall away. Then they get a whole new group of excited for a while, and that's where they get stuck. They hit this lid, and it's all about trust.
Why do you think that trust is often not there? Like this organization that came in and did this study, I can guarantee if they were a part of this conversation right now, they would tell us, man, most organizations we go in and do the study with, the lead team finds out there's less trust than they thought. Why do you think it's often not there?
Well, because I think two things that really are important for trust is communication. And as an organization gets larger, that gets more difficult. So one of the things I think why we did well is because we actually did want to evaluate ourselves, because we had a couple of years before realized as we grew rapidly and added a bunch of staff, we figured out ourselves that we thought we had a really good culture, but we realized, and we did, but the communication wasn't working right. And so it kind of felt like the lead team was this private group, like we get together with our hoods on and do our secret ceremonies, and
everybody else is wondering what's happening.
Everyone's wondering what's happening, and we thought we were communicating, and then really that wasn't, and it wasn't even just the top down and bottom up communication was our real problem. We discovered in that middle of that what really was the issue was the lateral communications. And like, did we have the systems where, okay, we know that when we want to say is we can get to our people, but you get larger, you got to start sharing, resource sharing, territory sharing. And so people that we hadn't developed the ability to make that smooth. And you know what? And that's a constant problem. It still is. I mean, we can go back and take this test now. It's like, we that's the other thing is people think it's a static thing. Oh, we have trust. We're done. Trust is like roller skating uphill. You're never sitting still. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards.
That's good. That's a great analogy.
So I think that's the mistake. And
with these good analogies, you should become a preacher.
I've tried it once or twice. I don't know. But so you get that. I think that's why it's so critical. And then I think the other thing is once you've established and you don't do that, I think a lot of leaders don't understand. Like one of the talks I try to talk to young leaders and church planters is, especially as you get larger, I think people underestimate what I consider one of the greatest tools for a leader to do when you're trying to move someone. And that's a simple question. I think it's the greatest question you can ask somebody if you're in that tight spot.
What's the question?
Do you trust me? People try to dance around this idea of getting people to try. You're in meetings, and I've seen a lot of times. I used to be this way. I'd get fighty, and I might have won the argument. But when you're in a leadership team and you're just trying to get vision cast and you're trying to get them to go with you, there was lots of times I knew more information. I had a bold, I could speak, I could land all the things.
You can sell something.
And I could win. And a friend of mine, he's on our staff, leader, but he poured into me, leading up way back when we first met. And he looked at me once after one of these meetings when I was a younger leader, and I completely won that room. I know I won the argument. But I didn't win the room. And he looked at me and he says, you know what? I've been watching you. You have all the right answers. You're a strong arguer. And you basically won that battle, but you're not winning this war. Because you didn't turn anyone. And I learned as I started to lead more, one of the ways you can help turn a room is instead of just giving them more information and more arguments and more, this is why we should do this. When you feel that resistance, even though you did give all the great stuff, you have to realize it's a matter of trust.
Yeah.
And sometimes all you got to do is stop, look someone in the eye, and say, "Do you trust me?"
And
trust me?
There's another layer there, isn't there? Because I've heard this somewhere and I've seen it to be true. The higher you go in leadership, the less you hear, right?
Yep.
So when you ask that question, you as a leader then have to go out of your way to try to create an environment where they feel safe enough to answer that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there's a lot of leaders that maybe are going to listen to this and they're going to go back and ask their team now, "Do you trust me?" And they're going to be, "Oh, yeah. But they're saying yes because it's actually not a safe place to say no. So that's where you're talking about skating uphill, where you're always working to create an environment where if someone for some reason doesn't feel safe or doesn't feel that they can trust you right now, that they could say that.
Yes.
Right?
And you have to build that. That's the part that takes the work. And what I've learned
and
in
humility
doing that,
and your part.
Well, and I think a lot of guys don't want to ask it because, one, you're afraid of the answer if they are honest.
Yeah.
Or two, you've developed an environment where they're going to say yes because if the environment's fear, so you have to unpackage that. You have to say, no, really, what is it? Because if they give you that blanket answer, you got to learn that nuance of saying, seriously, come on, I need to know.
Yeah.
And if you don't trust me, you can ask why. And the way I built it, for me personally, is over time, in critical moments, when I could tell there's a sense of pushback, I go, "Guys, do you trust me?" Yes. All right. I'm not saying that the thing that you're giving pushback is stupid. These are definite risks. These are definite issues. These are things we're going to have to deal with. And this might happen. I know that might happen too. I'm just asking, if you trust me, will you go with me? And we'll go down this road. And then what you do is, how you continue to build that trust is when they do it, even if someone said, "Yeah, I trust you," when they really didn't, if they turn out to be right, you have to, the next time you're talking, you have to own that. You have to look at the room and say, "Listen, I asked you guys to trust me, and Fred, you were right.
Yeah.
You were right. And you know what? So next time we go in this, we got to factor that a little bit more. I'm you know what? And how do we handle this?" And even when you have to handle the problem, instead of ignoring it, say, "Fred, how do you think we should?" Because you're the one that brought up this concern and it happened. And, and then when you do that, even if it goes wrong, because a lot of people think the only way you build trust is follow me, and as long as we have
everything's
victory,
working out.
They think the only way to win people over is to win.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can win people over when you lose.
Wow.
But
in losing, that's that humility. It's almost like I'm doing a plug for Patrick Lencioni here. I'm not, but there's another book where he talks about an employer, staff person that you want, a great leader is always going to be humble, hungry, and smart. Right?
We
so
use
there's that humble part.
Yep. You got to have the humility, and then I like even an older leader. Go back, date ourselves. John Maxwell.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called Failing Forward.
Yeah.
He goes, everyone falls down.
Yep.
But someone who's smart will pick something up off the ground while you're down there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, if you can own that, you can. I had years ago, there was one time back years ago where we were moving forward, and all of a sudden there was, there was 2008, 2009, the market, everything crashed. It's the only time our church went backwards. People were leaving this area.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had to reduce our budget a bit. And the only way we could back then was we had to drop a few staff people. The problem is we were a size of church that we only had a couple people that had a legitimate salary, and then a lot of people that were part-time or barely. And so it was either we got to let 4 people go, or one person that actually gets paid more that's not. And we had an area where, and I had a husband and wife, and they were both working for us. And I basically said, "Hey, I'm going to have to lay you off for a while.
Yeah.
I would love to bring you back." And because what his job, it wasn't as necessary. But his wife came to me and said, "Hey, I get it, but here's the mistake you're making. My husband his job description may be the one we can live without, but he is the most pastoral of all of you pastors that you have. He is the heart of the pastor's heart, that shepherd, and you kind of need him around." But she looked at me, she goes, "But you know what?" I go, "Well, do you trust me?" Because yes, I trust you. And that's why I'm telling you this. I think you're going to realize you made a mistake. Well, we laid him off. Within 2 months, we came back to the drawing board, says, "We have got to find the money to bring him back on staff." And in front of the whole staff, I commented on how the wife told me, and she goes, and she was right.
Well, you beat me to my question, so I was going to ask you, well, give me an example of a time where you did fail and you earned trust in how you reacted to that. So that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I did. And I owned it in front of the whole room.
Yeah.
We brought him back. Everyone, celebrated, and it was like we found the money somewhere else,
Yeah.
and we learned. And you know what? That made them both trust me even more.
Well, trust is one of those things. It's a hard thing to get and an easy thing to lose, right? Like how do leaders lose trust? We were talking about how you get it, but how do you lose trust?
I think when you don't follow through, I think it's been interesting with Tom Brady. Is he retiring? Is he not? They kind of announced now he's saying, hey, I don't know what's going on, but he's obviously like the GOAT of all time. And in the quarterback position, what's made him great is he's not only won a lot, he's been known to elevate everyone around him. And in one of his interviews a while back, I remember it was one of the interviews, and he just did it as a throwaway, kind of like a throwaway. And as everyone stopped and said, he says, I might not be, who knows if I'm better than everyone else, basically is what he's saying. But I know this, I will outwork everyone else. No one is going to, on my team, is going to outwork
And
me.
he's still known for that, isn't he? Like a 22-year
And
career.
I think that's part of what draws people to say, hey, even if and you know what? And then when he does not have a good game, it doesn't matter. Everybody knows that guy worked harder than all of us. He didn't just get to the top. And I think that's the thing that I still fight with. 20 years in, you got, big organizations. I still got to wake up in the morning and say, listen, I can't let, my team outwork me. You gotta lead from the front. Not too far in the front. They say if you get in front, you're a leader. Too far, you're now a target, because now you look like you're the enemy. You're so far away. And so that's another way. Don't get so far out there that you're not communicating. And I think the other way you lose trust, that one of the things that we did get in the survey that we thought, wow, this was really cool to find out, where people gave feedback, was we said this is one of our values, and it's proven out, but it's still, you got to fight it all the time. I've sensed it. I feel like I'm always going to our higher level leadership and go, guys, are you still doing this? And that is, you got to let leaders lead. It's interesting when an organization, a leader goes, I want leaders. But what they're really saying is, I want really loyal followers.
That is so true.
Because if you are going to leader, my dad taught me that. He was a military leader, and he said, listen, if you want to lead a leader, you got to learn how to live with a leader. And leaders are going to push the envelope.
Let me pause here. Say that again. That was a good line.
If you want to lead leaders, you got to learn how to live with leaders. And leaders are always going to push the envelope. Like if you have really good leaders, they're going to want to run up there with you. And sometimes a young leader is going to want to sprint ahead of you. And you got to know how to do that. If you're just frustrated with them all the time and you're creating policy to slow them down, it's like, what are you really looking for? And so what we try to live by is let leaders lead. And that's, a part of that principle is it's been thrown around. I don't even remember who originally said this, but it's been around forever, is the idea that don't separate responsibility from authority. And that's what a lot of organizations do. And that creates distrust.
Separating responsibility from authority.
So I give you a responsibility. This is your area of ministry. But yet a lot of the authority to make decisions on what you're going to do and how you're going to do it don't come back to you. First of all, that's going to frustrate an actual leader.
Yes, it will.
An actual leader, if you're not a leader, you're just a manager that likes the job. Hey, I'll do what you tell me to do, and fine. But then they don't get it done. And then the other thing it hurts is in the end that breeds distrust is, how do you evaluate that leaders? If you've never let them do what they said they wanted to do, and now they're failing, how do you hold them accountable when they didn't get to do what they want? So it breeds distrust, but it also, on the other hand, being the higher level leader, as you lead other leaders, it gives you a way better trustworthy moment to sit and evaluate. Say, listen, this isn't working. And we've given you the resource. You've been able to, no one stopped you. So it's a lot easier to grow them because they're not going to argue with you. They're going to trust you because they're going to say, we have trusted you. So now you should probably trust us that look what's happening. And so I think that's part of the thing that breeds distrust is, and as our organization got harder, as we hit like 100 staff people, it gets harder. Because I can't control it. When we're smaller, I can almost see, like you said, I see who's not doing that. And I go, hey, listen, I know that you're, now it's just, if I hear there and I'm pouring in the lead team, I'm like, guys, we got to watch out for this. And then as you get larger, we say you try to keep it as simple as possible. But a simple structure for a large church is way more complicated than a simple structure for it's not a one size fits all. And
Yes.
it gets and so what happens is you build a team. I think what helps breed this distrust is you have, you take of like, well, one way I made a mistake in breeding distrust is because you have two types of people that are kind of leading in a church. You have people that go out and make things happen, and then you got the people that need to come alongside them. You got the Marines that take the beaches of Normandy,
Yeah.
but then you have the Corps of Engineers that has to come build the
Build the
structure
roads and the
roads
airstrips.
and the dock system so you can keep the supplies flowing. And
those are usually totally different personalities.
They're different
right?
personalities, and you need both.
Yes.
And the problem is early on, I knew that they fight because what happens is you want to be efficiently effective. But a lot of people that are more about, they can reverse that, especially your more organized people, they sometimes want to be effectively efficient. So which one is the goal? Whichever you say second. So is the goal efficiency? The goal is always effectiveness.
Yes.
But the other side, they don't even think about efficiency. They're more like, I just want to be effective. It's like, no, you need but you got to keep in the right order. And I made a mistake early on when I was trying to battle that as we grew, trying to go, how do these people work together?
Yeah.
Because the one side wants to policy everything, organize it, and you do need plans. But we say around here, you plan so you can pivot. And then some people, all they do is pivot. But if you get a basketball passed to you and you're pivoting and you just pivot, all you're doing is going in circles.
Yeah.
So you got to have a plan. You can then pivot. But then other people say there's no pivoting, there's just a plan. And I made this is the mistake I made. That bred distrust from my more administrative minded team members. I called it chaos creators and chaos organizers, which the people that run out and create, they love that term. Yeah, I just storm the beaches. It's a chaos. It's a mess. But you know what? That's what I do. We go take the territory. We go take land. Well, I learned that people that like to organize things have a great revulsion to the word chaos.
They don't even want chaos organizer.
Chaos is always wrong.
Yes.
Always wrong. It doesn't matter. I used a bad word.
Yeah.
And you know what? They didn't trust me anymore. They thought I was the enemy. Now it's like, he doesn't get it.
Yeah.
He doesn't get it.
We're trying to solve the problem with chaos. And
instead of making them heroes and showing how they can be heroic,
Yeah.
I discouraged them and made them seem like problem causers. Like we're coming in and ruining all the fun.
Even with that story, though, it goes back to what you said earlier, where it's like trust and leadership. It's like roller skating uphill. You can't ever stop. You're always learning, right? There's another bump in it, or there's a crack in the sidewalk. You're going uphill, or there's a little rock. There's another thing that you have to overcome. Like you can't ever stop, right? Yeah. But why I love that is that goes back to self-leadership too, right? Yeah. It's the same thing with that. If someone's listening and they're going, well, I'm not really leading an organization or a team or anything, but you're leading yourself, it's the same thing. What worked for you 5 years ago may not work anymore because you're in a different setting, you're in a different place in life, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you also could turn this around and lead up with it.
Yeah.
Like if you're in a position, like some of the stuff I said resonates you not as the leader, resonates with you not as a leader, but as a like you're not the top dog in where you're at, and you feel like they don't let me lead, they don't let me do this. You know what? What if you can lead up, but what if you met with your manager, your director, and said, hey, do you trust me? Because I think I can help you.
So that's a question, not just from a leader.
Yes,
down,
I think you can. I think I can help you because I think you spend so much time trying to control everything I'm doing. That's probably, you could do better things with your time. Here's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Can you give me the room? Yeah. Trust me and let me go for it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they don't even realize it. Sometimes you get leaders and managers that they don't even know. They think their job management is more like, I just move chess pieces.
Yeah.
Instead of, and then you know what they end up being? Another phrase we learned is what a leader needs to be if you're going to lead a team is you need to be the bulldozer, not the barrier. And so that happens a lot in management, especially middle management. Yep. They feel like they're the barrier. They're the ones I got to stop. And I go, but you know what? Leaders are supposed to break out. We're supposed to go take care. It's like, so if you become the gatekeeper, like I'm the gatekeeper of letting you go, it's like, no. You need to be the one that helps knock gates down. You need to win what do you need? You need to be the bulldozer. But a lot of people, like if you're out there listening, you're not a leader. You go, yeah, that's exactly the problem with my leader. Well, then you know what? Try building trust in reverse order.
Yeah.
Instead of, if you trust me, follow me.
Yeah.
Say, if you trust that I know what you want,
let me do this.
Let me do this.
Yeah. Wow, that is so good. So let me just practically speaking, let's say someone's listening and they're working in a situation where they feel like they're working more with a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Right. So they're going to try to go ask that question, say, okay, do you trust me? Let me try this. And hopefully they have a situation where the person does, they're a good manager, leader, they see, and so they start building trust. What advice would you give to someone though that tries that a couple of times and it goes nowhere?
Send your resume to Rock Point Church and we'll talk.
I thought you would say something like that.
It's like at that point, if you know, you got two. There's actually two ways. First, are you humble enough that why did they say they don't want to trust you with it?
Okay, because it could be.
Because what if they're not trying to be a gatekeeper? What if they're literally seeing some stuff in you that's holding you back, and they literally, if they have an answer, maybe humble yourself and say, are they right? Mm-hmm. Or am I willing to listen to them? Mm-hmm. Like they go, I would, but you know what? Here's the things I'm concerned with.
Yeah.
Well, take it and see if you can apply it.
So the first thing is just to be humble enough to listen to
go. Maybe there's a reason
the feedback they're giving. Yep.
But if they just don't get it, and you try a few times and they just won't, they're like, that's just not how we roll around here. Then I think you're going to have to decide, well, how important is for you? Like if you're happy, like, you know what, I tried, but you know what, I guess, you know, I don't hate the job doing it this way. Well, then, you know, enjoy it, do it. But if it's bothering you, then you're probably going to have to, you know, start looking around and see what's going on. I don't think the best thing to do is to be a disloyal sower of rebellion within your organization.
Mm-hmm. Which is what often happens in those situations.
Yeah,
right?
A lot of people, you sit on the back of the bus yelling about the bus driver all the time, and it's like you're better off just, hey, can you drop me off at this bus stop?
Get off the bus.
I'm going to find a bus going a different direction. You know, and because all that's going to do is stress you out, and also all it's going to do is if you left the organization, wouldn't you rather leave with them saying, hey, we believe in them, they were great, they left, they ended well?
Yes.
And that'll set you up better for the future. But I think you can try to lead up, you can listen and be humble yourself. And then if that doesn't work, you know what you got to do. You got to start looking around, you know, and if you know especially, you know, if you're like me and you and know the Lord and trust the Lord, you start praying about it.
Yeah, exactly. I love your answer because, again, using the analogy of the bus, if you're sitting in the back of the bus, be humble enough to recognize, you know what, maybe that bus driver does know more than me and can give me some insight into me. But if you stay in the back of the bus and you're humble and you thought through it and it's just they're going to be a gatekeeper, nothing's going to change, you're just going to get bitter and angry and cause all kind of discord on the bus. Just get off the bus and go. Yeah, that's
ultimately
great advice.
Sometimes it's weird. It's like, I know you're moving on, but you believed in this organization, especially if it's a church.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you leave a church, you're like, I have to, you know, blow this place up. But no, you don't, because you're like, well, they're never going to learn. I go, think about it. If you have a manager and you move on and that keeps happening, they don't learn. Well, then that either the organization, the next higher up will learn, because the way they're going to learn is like, why does this person keep like going through, you know, decent staff?
Yeah.
They'll either take notice, or even beyond them, the whole organization from top down is led that way.
Yeah.
Well, then, you know what? Sometimes the only way they're going to find out is when they just, that's the way they're going to be. They're going to just never really get anywhere.
They start sliding backwards on their roller skates down the hill.
Bingo.
But that may take a while.
And it may take a long time. It depends on how big the hill is. You know, they might not know it. And so if you just leave and blow it up, guess what? You gave them a reason to blame that, you know what, you're just nasty. You're just not you just don't know what you're doing. You're just angry. You're bitter. You know, they're not. So if you even really want your parting thing to help them, if they're not going to go, is to go well.
Wow. That's such great advice, because I guarantee you there's some listeners that are in those kind of situations. And if they take this advice and will maybe humble themselves to really evaluate, is my manager or boss, are they speaking some things that are truth? And I need to take that advice. If they're not, to end well or finish well with whatever they're doing. That's such great advice. So let's, before I ask you the two truths and a lie, let's just wrap up with this. What practical advice would you give to me, all of our listeners, about how to lead well with trust as a parting way to just say, hey, maybe start doing these things right now in your life? Like one of them you said earlier was ask people, do you trust me? But what are some other things?
I think, well, there's the obvious things. Like if you say you're going to do something, do it. Be consistent. But I think in a more like,
but let me just jump in
yeah.
really quick. We say that's obvious, but I think when we talk about self-trust, that's one of the biggest things that right?
Yeah.
I'm going to start eating healthy. And it's always tomorrow. I mean, I know I'm talking to myself right now.
Yeah.
But, you're going to lose trust pretty soon where you even know internally, I say I'm going to start eating healthy, but I'm not really not.
And
so that's part of it right away. Yeah.
And I think that's where, as a leader, you need some community. You want community within the organization, but if you're like me, if you're the top leader, you don't ever stop. Like, I think that model of Paul's and Timothy, and then, Paul actually had
truth tellers in your life, right?
He had Barnabas and people in his life, but then, so he started off like a Timothy, then he became Paul, but he continues to have and Timothy. And I think you should always have a Timothy and a Paul in your life. If you're a leader, you have Timothy's.
Explain what that means to someone.
Well,
who
Paul was, he
became
a believer and rose up and was a great leader. And he basically wrote 2/3 of the New Testament, planted, a ton of churches.
Talk about leading
and he
organization.
Raised up, and he would go start a church, raise up leaders and leave. And Timothy was a guy he wrote a couple letters to. He became kind of like a son to him. He actually called him like a son. And he wrote to him all the time. And the last letter he wrote was to Timothy, encouraging him in his leadership. And he always encouraged him to build up other leaders. And so you have this Paul-Timothy thing. And I think everyone, you start off as a Timothy with a Paul in your life. But then when you become the Paul, sometimes you forget you're also still a Timothy. There's someone out there that you got to have some truth tellers in your life that if you're going to stay consistent, you need people that don't, that will like not just buy into the image that everyone has of you. That won't just, because sometimes you start believing your own press clippings, kind of a deal. And you need people that'll do that. And I have several mentors in my life that I'll still go, hey, here's my issue. And they're honest enough to go, well, you know why you did that? I'm like, I go, why you, And my wife is really good at it too, man. Yeah. She'll just look at me and be like, okay, well, you think why? So you need that.
Yep.
So you need to find people that are willing to know you and are willing to be honest with you. And even if you argue with them, you're willing to go think about it.
Yeah.
And you have that, be consistent with that and stay true to that. But I also think it's just like every day go, what am I called to do? Like, you have the issues. You're like, why do I not do this? How do I struggle with this? And you got to keep the main thing the main thing. Can't
do everything.
Yeah. Like that's
but
one of the things.
What are you called to do?
And that's one of the things to keep trust. One of the things that someone else, this great team, man. It was actually one of my chaos organizers who was a high level leader that I frustrated to no end because using the word chaos, but she really helped our operation stuff. And we used to ask, like, if we had an idea, like, can we do this? And she coined this term that I've used so many times was we can do anything, but we just can't do everything.
That's so good.
And
we can do anything.
We can't do everything. We just can't do everything.
And that's true of us as an individual or an organization, right?
And I think that's where you lose trust is when you start getting excited about everything and try to do everything. Guess what? You start dropping balls. Things aren't as good. People start to doubt. And it's like, okay, but when you focus and we go, okay, well, if we really think this is the most important thing to do, a lot of times you're already at full tilt. So a lot of times when we add something new, we're like, okay, what are we going to back off on?
Yeah.
What are we going to stop? And I think how that helps build trust in a practical way, especially if you have a team, is a lot of times the team feels like, do you know what's really going on here? Because you came in with this new direction, you added it, but we still have all this stuff. You can't just add stuff that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of us, we feel like as leaders, hey, the way I'm going to get trust is I need momentum. I need a victory. Yeah, you do. Yeah. But when you get a victory do you just keep running from one unsustainable victory to the next? Because every time you win, you're like, okay, where's this going to go? Well, now we need all this structure. We need all this. Yeah. And it's like, we can't just keep adding. You kill your team.
Yeah. Which goes back to they start losing trust.
They start losing because I'm pouring in this worked, and I'm developing this, but what's coming next?
We've won a lot of battles, but the war's over there.
And the war's over here, and now we have to keep sustaining all of this. We have all these. Don't make the mistake, like that Germany did. Hitler's like, don't start a two-front war when you don't have the resources for a two-front war.
Yeah,
and I think leaders, we get overly excited all the time. And a lot of people with vision and leadership, reason they lose trust is we lose interest in things really fast.
Yeah. That's how we're wired as leaders usually.
We like to chew bubble gum for the flavor and the sugar, not to blow bubbles. And the problem is bubble gum is designed, it has the sugar, but to blow good bubbles, you literally have to chew it till the flavor's gone. Because you have that granulated sugar in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't blow a good bubble till the sugar's gone. And I go, the problem is a lot of us visionaries,
we spit the gum out.
we go, that I've lost the taste. I go, we didn't blow the bubble yet.
Yeah.
And so you don't stick around long enough. You don't stick to it and you just jump around. And that's one of the most practical things I've seen a lot of guys do is they try to do everything.
Yeah.
And especially a new startup, a company, or even but a church especially. You start up and you do not have the resources, but you think to compete, to get everyone, I got to do everything. Well, you can't do everything. And so you spread yourself thin, you burn out your leaders, you really burn out your volunteers, and then they don't trust you. And then you know what? And people don't trust your church and organization because everything you do is not done very well.
Yeah.
And
boy,
so
that's so good. Yeah. Years ago, when I was helping to turn around an organization, I wrote 2 words on 2 index cards and just put in my office: focus and urgency. I was like, man, we have to have a sense of urgency, but you can't have an urgency for everything. It has to be a focused urgency, and it's what you're saying. I'm going to take that away from what we've talked about today, where what she said to you, we can do anything, we just can't do everything. Man, that's so good. So, Bill, let's finish with this. It's kind of ironic that I'm going to ask you to lie because this is no gray areas. Yeah. That's the name of the podcast. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, give us 2 truths and a lie. We do this with all our guests. They've heard you speak in here for 30 minutes plus, and I know you pretty well, so hopefully I can figure this out. 2 truths and a lie. Let me see if I can figure it out.
This was our one because I know you knew it. I've told and a lot of things I would try to do. Yeah. Wouldn't fool you because we've had such long conversations about because you always try to find something that's I wouldn't believe that, but you know all of those. Yeah. So I just went with some jobs I've had.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to give you 3 jobs that I have.
I got to pick which one.
And 2 of them I've had, 1 of them I didn't.
Okay.
Okay. So before I got into ministry many moons ago, I have been a pool cleaner.
Okay.
I have been a security guard, and I've been a PE teacher.
Ooh. Oh, man. Okay, the security guard and PE teacher, right away, I'm going, that's got to be it. You know, like if they're watching, you have your coat on, you got some guns on you and everything. You could make a good security guard, PE teacher. So I'm gonna go with those are the 2 truths. The lie is the pool.
Man, you were good, dude.
I got it?
You got that so quick. I didn't even think of the way that you figured it out, too.
Yeah,
it was I thought, grew up in Arizona. I obviously probably cleaned pools, but no.
You'd make a good bouncer, except that you're so nice and you're smiling all the time. You know, I just can't see you like scowling.
I didn't last long.
Yeah.
I got a job as a security guy at night. It was a nighttime thing, so I was working these night shifts.
Yeah.
And it was just...
like overnight?
Yes. I would go in, sometimes it was... The early shift would be I went 3 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it was like
11 a.m. to 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Or 11 to it was like these long shifts, and it was brutal.
By the way, there's another thing. Not only are we wearing matching coats today, there's another thing we have in common. So for 4 years when I was going to Bible college, I was a night shift security guard in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
We have another thing.
Well, you lasted longer than me. I walked off the shift and quit mid-shift at one point.
Yeah. Oh, it's brutal.
They sent me to a horrible part of town in this apartment complex that was just it was scary, and it was supposed to be an armed post, but I wasn't old enough to be armed.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in this post, and it has the post order. You know, when you do a security, like, here's what you need to do. You got to go check around and all this, and it said this is an armed, and someone, the manager guy with a pencil, just drew a line through armed.
So you were unarmed in an armed guard post,
And the uniform they gave me had a bullet hole in the pants from whoever had worn it before.
That was a pretty clear sign.
And so when they started sending me to these dangerous things, and I walked out and I saw like crimes happening right away, right in there. And I saw a crime happening, and everyone's like, "It's the police." They looked, I go, "Oh, it's just the security guard." And they went right back to what they're doing. I was like,
the unarmed security guard with a bullet hole in his...
I'm going home. Yeah. I don't need this job. It wasn't. And then, being nights just messed me up.
Yep.
Yep. So that was fun.
Well, Bill, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. I learned a lot today. I know the audience learned a lot as well. So keep at it. Congratulations again for 20 years, the celebration you just had this last weekend. So
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's fun to be here. And I hope there was some helpful stuff for people out there.
For sure. Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to the No Gray Areas podcast. To dive deeper into the story, be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and check out nograyAreas.com.